Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's NFL futures. With training camp right around the corner, BetOnline has opened up odds for team wins, division futures, and of course, Bennett, the Super Bowl. And if we're talking MLB, I do want to say over the last 4 weeks or so, I'm hitting 56% of my MLB bets. So
pretty good.
Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's signing up today. Let me see if I can read this correctly. That's sign up today and you'll receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get the bonus and get in on the action. Bet online. That's where the game starts.
Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. We have a special guest coming on, Jack. Quite the podcast episode, I'd say.
Yeah, and the special guest you're referring to is not the spider that is somewhere in my recording studio.
Nope, he can't speak.
I also like how I called it a recording studio when it's not that at all.
I like that for you, though. That was good.
Maybe I should set up in my closet. That'll be my recording studio. How have you been? Long time no see. I feel like I haven't seen you in like 48 hours.
We were in Roanoke together, folks. Great time. Beautiful city. And so we don't have a ton tonight, but there is TBT, the basketball tournament. So we had Joe Kuykendall, who's the GM for that JMU alumni team, on to talk about that event, which I think fans are kind of familiar with at this point, I think, for the most part, but maybe some people aren't. So we hit the basics and then talked a little bit of some of the more detailed parts of the event. I think it's a fun interview, but before we get to that, the news of the week, Chase DeLauder.
This is huge news. Chase DeLauder selected 16th overall. Yes, 16th, 1-6 by the Cleveland Guardians. Highest draft pick by any JMU baseball player in James Madison history. He was projected coming into this season as one of the top 4 potential prospects. I think he was the number 1 college prospect coming into this season. He had some injury problems. He had some issues against Florida State in the beginning of the season. And then those questions never were fully answered as he had the injury issues. He just shut himself down for the season. I don't know if he wasn't going for the draft, if he would have been able to come back, but he shut it down, and he has the potential now to be a contributor within the next 2 to 3 years, I would say, making it up to Cleveland and playing for the Guardians. A huge draft pick, and probably his stock seemingly wasn't too impacted by the injuries and whatnot.
Yeah, really hard to move through the minors to the majors, but so much easier if you're a first round pick, right? They're going to give you pretty much every opportunity. So if he plays well at the lower levels, they're just going to keep moving him up with the hopes that one day he could, be a starter for them and play. Obviously, he has a pretty impressive swing. I know there were some scouts that were maybe doubting his bat speed or things like that, and I think some JMU players and coaches were getting pretty fired up on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, he played unbelievably well at JMU, had a great summer in the Cape. So I'm excited to see what he does. Obviously, got to stay fully healthy, but what he does in the minors.
Also had a great year in the RCBL. Can't forget about the COVID year where the RCBL was one of the only summer leagues in the nation playing. And I think he batted 750.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Did you see also when he got drafted that the CAA Sports tweeted I thought that was hilarious.
Yep. Carl Magenhofer had a fantastic tweet where he was just like, so what's the line? He's in your conference when he gets drafted, but he's not in the conference when they're playing for a to get into the conference tournament.
Pretty ridiculous, especially now that they're in the Sun Belt, to be like, Chase DeLauder is the conference's highest draft pick since 2004. It's like you didn't let him even play in the conference tournament, you morons. But anyway,
he's also not a CAA member when he got drafted.
Right.
Like he
So
is technically a Sun Belt member.
just a ridiculous, nonsensical thing, but excited for him, excited for the baseball program. That's a nice little splash for them in general. I think that was the biggest story of the week. Another one that I saw today,
Uh-huh.
I might pronounce this wrong. I think it's Jack Bonifant. Could be pronouncing that wrong.
Oh yeah.
He's playing in a golf tournament. It's like the US, I forget the exact name. I'll have to come up with it, like US Adaptive Open or something like that. But it's really cool, and he has kind of an incredible story. And I had never heard of him until today. But I guess he was, based on the tweet that I'm seeing from Beth Ann Nichols, who's a senior writer for Golf Week, accidentally dropped down a flight of stairs at 6 weeks old. Looked it up, seemed like he had some pretty significant injuries to his skull. And doctors were saying that he wouldn't be able to do certain activities, like they would not expect him to be able to play golf. Ended up playing college golf at JMU, is now in this tournament as like a scratch golfer. So just thought that was really cool. Shot him a note on LinkedIn. So might have him on the podcast at some point if we can get him. But just thought that was a cool story I did not know about and had never heard about on the JMU front.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great find, Bennett. Round of applause. And without further ado, do you want to throw it over to our interview?
Yeah, let's talk to Joe.
I mean, with the man, the myth, the legend, the GM of the Founding Fathers. Take it away, Bennett.
We'd like to welcome in Joe Kuykendall, GM of the Founding Fathers. Joe, thank you so much for joining us to talk a little bit of TBT.
Yeah, absolutely. I always appreciate you guys having us on, and could talk about TBT and JMU basketball all day.
Well, let's start with what is TBT, or I guess the basketball tournament, and how did JMU sort of find a place in this, or JMU alumni find a place in this event?
Yeah, so I can't remember if it's like 8th or 9th year of TBT, but stands for the basketball tournament, and they kind of describe it as a entry for all, winner take all $1 million basketball tournament. I describe it as a kind of glorified pickup or glorified intramurals, because in theory, anybody in the country or world could enter a team of players and coaches to compete in the tournament, and 64 team tournament, vying for the $1 million prize to split amongst the team. And as it's grown over these past years, some big names have created teams, and some obviously the $1 million is a big add to it as well. And TBT has kind of 4 criteria they say they look at. Probably going to get them out of order. Maybe it's 3, but it's reliability. So will you show up? Because at the end of the day, all these games are on ESPN. They're expecting the Founding Fathers and other teams to show up with the guys they say they are. And then fan base. So do you have a following? And then skill level. And so they kind of say in that order, because that criteria has led to a lot of alumni teams, because they have a built-in fan base, right? You could have a team of studs, but if they don't really have a fan base or following, they're not going to sell tickets. They're not going to have viewers. And some non-alumni teams have really created a following over these years, though. They've kind of become TBT staples, one of which was Sideline Cancer, of course, we played last year. And so being an alumni team was really helpful for us to get in. And the backstory is they actually reached out, I think, to me when I was a manager in 2015, when TBT was first getting started, about putting a team in. So I kind of tried a couple years, put some half efforts in, and then we made a really big run at putting a team in summer 2018. We're probably the first team left out. That's back when they did the voting. Now they all handpick the teams, and then combination of them reaching out to us and us reaching out to them last year, December 2020 at this point. And they said, we'd love to have you. Because they were looking for some more alumni teams, and they knew the JMU fan base. And obviously we got in last year, made a little splash for ourselves despite losing, and got lucky enough to be invited back this year. So we're here to run it back and hopefully get some wins this year, not just be one and done.
You mentioned last year going through it. It was a few years in a row where
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Twitter polls would come up and we'd all vote and we'd all be really excited about it. And then last year you guys finally got in, and now hope to be a mainstay moving forward. But what was it like last year, that process of finally getting that fan support and meeting all 3 criteria to make that push and make the jump into the tournament?
Yeah, it was quite the accomplishment. And although we definitely were pleased, I think I said we won while still losing last year with everything that came from it, but we were still in it to win it. But it felt really good for me and Kevin, my assistant GM and head coach, and even kind of the players that were tenants for us, AJ, of course, being one, and Ron and Andre and Devon, because we did put a lot of work in a couple years ago. And, it's just kind of us putting a team together. But there's a couple of times where me and Kevin will text and we get frustrated, or it's a lot of work and we're like reminding ourselves, like, it's a pretty big deal to get a team, 1 of 64 teams in on ESPN with some big time names tweeting about it, articles on ESPN, and other stuff. And so it felt really good last year. And the approach was a little different this year, because even though they gave us kind of a verbal that we were in last year, we still felt like we needed to prove ourselves leading up to Selection Sunday. And they gave us a lot of like wink, wink, like you're in, but it still didn't feel quite real until it was reality on Selection Sunday or Wednesday, I guess. And then this year, same thing. They pretty much said we were in, but there was still a little, just because based on our history, we were like, man, we gotta earn it to get in. And so, but we were able to work on more team management leading up to it versus like trying to prove that we belong, whether it's fans or support or that we're creative in certain ways. And so the approach was a little different this year, but in all the same. And we're definitely not taking anything for granted for being in. We know there's a lot of really good teams on the outside in. I mean, Fort Worth Funk was like a TCU alumni team that made a splash last year. They got left out this year. And even like Stillwater Stars and Oklahoma State alumni team, they were in this year and they just dropped like last minute last week, right before they got in. They had to find a replacement team. So we know it's a big responsibility to be in, and we don't take it for granted, but we're looking for more than just a pat on the back to be in. We're trying to rattle off a few games and rattle off 6 wins and get this $1 million.
Let's talk roster a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to last year. So I think people who followed will be familiar, and obviously people who follow JMU, but who are some of the bigger names? I know there's, 3 guys who didn't play at JMU, but there's also a strong JMU connection. Kamaya Smalls, I believe, is on the roster again.
Yep. So we have a roster of 11, includes AJ Davis, of course, who probably won't see court time this year, just because he's still rehabbing. We hope that he'll eventually get prosthetics and can actually kind of play in a game in the future. That's the long-term goal. But 11 people. So we brought 9 back from last year, who are actually on the roster. One of the 2 that's dropped off is Dimitri Jabarkapa. He transitioned from a playing role to a coaching role, and he actually graduated with his PhD at University of Kansas, and he runs their basketball performance center, unrelated to athletics. They obviously do a lot of research with KU basketball, but he and his team, he and 3 of his coworkers actually left this morning from Lawrence, and they're driving to Harrisonburg, and they're going to write a research paper on our training camp. And so that's kind of sponsoring our training camp, because they're doing a lot of they're researching how load plays into fatigue and stuff, and how at the top of your game you are at the end of your game. So we're doing a scrimmage Friday morning. They're doing some preliminary testing Thursday, and then doing a scrimmage Friday morning with some different tests in between. But so he's transitioned to like a sport performance coach. And so once he does his research, though, he'll be one of our coaching staff members from a sport performance standpoint. So helping our guys with stretching and all the other stuff, and then also contributing from a basketball standpoint on the side. So we replaced his spot. We kind of have an unwritten rule of having 7 to 8 JMU on the team. So we knew we needed to replace him with a JMU. We replaced him with Joe Posey, who's an older alum, I think 09 grad. So the only pre-Matt Brady player that we have. He had a decent career at JMU. He's a good shooter, really good shooter. He'll actually be our representative in the 33-point contest, something kind of people, if you follow TBT, but not necessarily, but they do a 3-point contest the night before in each regional, and the winner of that gets $33,000, and the winner of each regional advances to Dayton to play. But he'll be a representative for that. And then, we have Brandon McLean, who's a 5-man returning from last year, who provided a lot for us. I think he got 10 and 10. I think he got a double-double last year. Cody Ballard, who was a starter and scorer for us last year. He's a Columbus guy, so Devon and AJ person. And then we replaced one of our non-JMU. So we kind of replaced one JMU and one non-JMU with Desmond Ringer, who's another center who will help us immensely. We knew having a center was going to be a focus, adding a center, because Brandon provided a lot last year, but when we were give him some breathers, and finding good big men is really, really hard. And, when we were in the search, we even texted some of our coaching friends, hey, you got anybody that can help us out? And they'd say, man, I got this person, but I don't know if they can do it. And they couldn't do it. And we'd always be like, finding big men's hard. And they're like, recruiting big men and good big men and real college basketball is really hard too. It's not just TBT. But luckily Brandon had actually played against Desmond in Germany. And Desmond's been incredible for us so far. We haven't obviously met or seen him play with our team, but he'll be at training camp. And he was actually a name. So Brandon's one that mentioned the name, but crazy how things connect. So when I first graduated from JMU, I spent 1 year as director of women's basketball operations at Mercer University. Well, Desmond went to Mercer and he was on the men's team when I was there. So we didn't really know each other, but I was familiar with Desmond from being on the men's team there. And we both recognized each other. So a good pickup for us, and helpful that Brandon knew him and was able to help us add him. So now we have 2 centers versus just 1. And we had a Brandon like 72 hours before our game last year. So we were kind of rocking with no centers going into that game. And here we are. So that's an update on the roster. Yeah, Kamaya, and then Kamaya, Devon, AJ, Ron, Andre, Scooter, Stuckey. I think that's everyone on the JMU side is back.
If I remember correctly from last year's game, Scooter went off for like some
I think he might have had 10 points. He might have had double figure scoring too. Yeah.
Can we expect the same out of him this season? Because I remember like just JMU Twitter was like, "What's happening?"
Yeah.
He started like 3 for 3 or something where it was just, and they're all huge buckets. Can we expect the same out of Scooter, or will there be?
Yeah, Scoot can go. We knew he could play, but again, that was someone me and Kevin had really never seen play. But I think when people see, and he did an interview earlier this week with JMU, and he transferred to D2 IUP, but IUP is legit. They're one of those D2s. I mean, in the interview, I think he said they lost to like Maryland by 10. They beat some other Division I, and he says they would have beaten JMU the year that his sophomore year or whatever. And I don't disagree. Like Scoot can go. He played a couple years of pro, so hope we can expect that out of him. And I think he kind of surprised. Now he works for the Duke Club. Now he's head of the Duke Club, which is kind of a cool story too. Probably one of the few teams that has a non-coaching member work at the school they're representing, if that makes sense. And I think he turned a lot of donors' heads last year, and hopefully he can turn some more heads this year. Maybe we can help him fundraise too. Maybe we should do $100 for every bucket he gets or something. Something funny to help the Duke Club grow too. But yeah, we're expecting the same thing from Scooter. He was a great ad for us last year. And I mean, he was the perfect like off the bench player, right? Just give you like 20 minutes and just go as hard as you can and fill in those holes, get some great steals and some great buckets. So
what's it like from your role and your perspective? So you're the GM, you've spent all this time setting up a team. I know last year getting in was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And it seems to go very fast when the event comes, right? You got there and it was a single elimination. It's one really good performance. And then you guys got knocked out. But what's it look like for you the months leading up? And then obviously leading up to it this year, it sounds like you guys have set up a training camp, which seems like a change from last year. And what sort of the lead up look like for you? Yeah,
it's a lot of work. And I hope to kind of appreciate it more this year. I mean, it was fun last year. I actually had a wedding the night before and near Stanton. And so I didn't get to Charleston until the morning of. I left at like 5 a.m. So I literally had like less than 24 hours to enjoy it all. I mean, luckily I was there for the game. And so with training camp leading up to it and being able to get there the night before, and we're going to get some wins and make a deep run. I hope I can appreciate it more, but not to do my own horn, but it's a lot more work, I think, than people realize. Coordinating schedules and flights for people and fundraising and all that stuff. It's a lot of work. And especially with the training camp this year, that adds a couple extra days. We need commitment from people. And maybe more so than other teams, that we have some, 3 or 4 of our players are really good players, but they don't play professionally currently. So they're not necessarily like off in the summer. Right. So Scooter, it's a little different because he works for the Duke Club, but he's got a full-time job too. Right. And like Devon Moore plays in a lot of pro-ams, but he's got a full-time job in Columbus, Ohio. And so coordinating those schedules to get time off and stuff like that. And then when you throw in Kamaya, when they're WNBA season, which is her goal, it's like, we want Kamaya to be with us, but we want her to make a run in the WNBA too. So like, I was excited when she got caught up to the link. So it's a lot coordinating schedules and fundraising and little insight too, like TBT, they covered hotels last year. Well, they don't cover any expenses this year. And so we want to be able to provide a fully covered experience for all the players. And so fundraising goes into that, coordinating schedules, and there's a couple forms TBT requires you to fill out. And I mean, everyone's lives get busy, but we have a roster of 15 and everyone's got to fill that stuff out. And so it's definitely a lot of work. And when I work a full-time job too, the past 2 weeks, I think every evening I've had to spend focusing on TBT, which I love. Like I do it because I love this and it's fun. And I want to provide an opportunity for these players to get some of the best pro contracts they can after this. But definitely a lot of work with roster management and forms that got to be submitted, and coordinating with TBT, and we're one of the few teams that does our own gear sale on the side and coordinating that too. So definitely a labor of love, but a lot of labor too, and a lot of love.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's not an easy thing. I think that's what some fans, obviously they're like, oh, this is cool, and they tune in for the game, but it's months and months of work leading up to it. I mean,
we essentially started when we lost last year, starting again for this year. I mean, obviously we weren't working every day on it like we have the last month, but he even mentioned, I mean, I vividly remember this meeting, and he mentioned it in his interview the other day on the daily sports feed, was Andre, like, that after we lost that game, Andre and Ron came up to me in Kevin's room and were like, we're doing this again next year. Let's figure out now how we're going to get a win this year. And so the planning definitely started last year once we lost against Sideline. And here we are. And it's crazy to think we're a week away. That year flew by from when we lost. I mean, I think the anniversary was today, actually. I think the game was a year ago today, if I'm not mistaken. So 365 days plus, and we're back at it.
Yeah. Sorry, Jack, go ahead.
I was going to say, so with just a few days left between now and, or I guess when the listeners are listening and when tip off occurs, can you break down when, where, how, all the watching stuff, you know, the housekeeping stuff. And then also, what are your expectations? Like you've said a few times, you want to see a run, you want to see a couple of wins, 6 wins, win it all. What are your expectations for game 1 though?
Yeah. Besides Dimitri starting travel today, everyone else kind of starts travel Wednesday, Thursday. So we're convening on Harrisonburg. Some people get there Wednesday night. We're going to have one evening training camp session Thursday evening at the AUBC. We're not going to have our whole team at training camp. I think we're only have 5 to 6, and we'll have a couple other fill-in. So we'll get up to 10, just some fill-in guys for training camp. It was just hard to coordinate schedules. But Thursday, we'll do an evening session of training camp. Friday, we're going to do a morning session, which is a full 40-minute scrimmage. So that's kind of the bulk of Dimitri's research, but it'll also be good to do a 40-minute scrimmage. And we're going to do the Elam ending in that scrimmage too, because we've watched some games now, and I feel like players just kind of lose their minds in the Elam ending. I don't know if it's an ego thing or not. And so we really want to emphasize like focus and getting good shots in the Elam ending. And then we're going to do a Friday night session as well. That'll be open to the public from 4 to 6 p.m. So that was just announced today. And hopefully more information will be coming from JMU about that as well. But public practice, so feel free to come by the AUBC Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Would love to see you. The guys will be available to chat and autographs and all that after the practice and during this to be the fans team and all that. Saturday morning, we'll wake up, drive to Charleston together, about 3-hour drive, get settled in at the hotel, probably do some film and scouting. And then that night is the 33-point contest. So Joe Posey will be our rep. And they call it a 33-point contest because it's just head-to-head. You can shoot wherever you want around the perimeter, and you got to make 11 threes for 33 points. And Brandon McLean will be his rebounder. You get 1 rebounder. And then Sunday morning, just get after it, wake up and maybe do a couple more team meetings and stuff just to get our minds right, and then tip off with her dad at 5 p.m. And so we're excited about this matchup. It's, last year we got matched up with one of the best, most known teams of TBT, Sideline Cancer. And this year we're getting matched up with another popular team and arguably the home team. If you say there's 2 home teams at TBT with Charleston, West Virginia, and Heard That in West Virginia. And so we're super excited about this matchup. I think there's a little chip on our shoulder and bulletin board material too, because not only do we know just from our own knowledge of the game and the tournament, but also many people have come out and publicly said how excited they are for the Heard That West Virginia second round matchup. And so we vehemently plan to spoil those plans. And so we're excited about that. They have a good history. They made a deep run in the bubble 2 years ago. They got a win, and then I think they only lost by 1 point to the team that lost in the finals last year, Team 23. So we know they can play. And John Elmore, their shooter, who's a Marshall alum, like he's a bucket. We know that he's going to be a big part of stopping him. Will be a big part of our game plan, and we know we have guards that can guard him too. They made 2 late adds last night. Trey, I can't think of his name now. The guy that played at ODU and then transferred to Nevada, and then another guard whose name escapes me at the moment. And both of those guys can play. And so had to adjust some scouting report last minute, but that's part of TBT too. And we're just going to go at it the same way we kind of did last year. And again, we watched some of these games, and coaches say, but I agree, like basketball is an easy game, and especially in TBT with it kind of being glorified pickup, we think our strength can be a little more organization and a little more like discipline, whether it's discipline in rebounding, hitting the glass, or discipline in boxing out, or discipline in the shot you get. That's kind of our game plan, but we're certainly excited. Don't want to give too much away, but I think it's kind of obvious too. Like Andre was hurt last year, which people didn't know. I think he got less than 10 minutes. But as many JMU fans know, Andre Nation can freaking play basketball. And so we feel like we have a little weapon in our back pocket with Andre. Obviously Ron can absolutely go, Brandon can go, Scooter can go, Devon can go, but people saw that last year, right? And heard that, can watch film to see that from last year. But Devon or Andre Nation can score, he can defend. He's a dog. I loved his quote he had on the radio the other day where he was like, "We might be underdogs, but that means we still got dog in us." And that's Andre's mentality, and he's matured a lot. Everyone knows his backstory. He doesn't shy away from the backstory. He acknowledges how much he's grown up and matured, and he's been a great leader for us in many respects. And so having him and Ron and those people just get after it and just play as hard as we can, I think can be our strength. And I feel good about our matchup. I mean, Heard That says the same thing, right? They feel good against us. And so, but we're excited and hopefully can play spoiler in the hometown crowd. And we hope to have some JMU fans there too. I've seen some people express showing up. I'd be naive to say I think we'll have more than Heard That, because I don't think we will. But if we can get a couple people in there and get some noise in there, it'd be really cool to play in front of the home crowd. I am kind of excited because we're in the same session as Best Virginia, Dream Virginia that plays after us. I'm interested to see if the Best Virginia fans will root for us to upset Heard That, or they want Heard That to win to get the matchup that they want. So I don't know which way that'll go, but we can control what we control and just do what we did last year. And we had a really good game plan last year, as you saw by how we played against Sideline. Couple possessions early on, I think we could have changed up how we approached those. And at the end of the day, it was a 1-possession game. And so if you fix 1 or 2 of those possessions, you can come out with the win.
Yeah, I was curious kind of what the process is like of evaluating other teams. How much do you put into it? So yeah, I had Heard That roster up, and it does look like they added Trey Porter, who's a 6'11" guy.
Yeah.
When a team adds someone who's 7 feet tall, essentially, like a week before the game, and Sunday at 5, what's sort of the reaction? Is it just kind of business as usual, or you do some scouting on him and change maybe the game plan at all?
We'll definitely change up the scouting report a little bit. We haven't done too much of that. We've sent it out, some film and some paper scout to the players. We also don't want to over scout either. Like, these are adult and professional players. We're not trying to, they want to win the $1 million, and we're not trying to drown them with all these different things. And we want it to be fun too at the same time. So I wouldn't say too much changed, and we'll do some film this weekend. And the roster deadline, I think, is 72 hours before your first game. So Heard That's kind of announced that it's locked in by now. It's Monday when we're recording this. And I don't think they're lying by saying it's not locked in, but at a minimum 72 hours before, it'll have to be locked in. And so our approach doesn't change too much, just kind of add them to the scout. And it's kind of unique too. It's the same. It's interesting kind of how you approach conference tournaments too. You have a whole week to prepare for this one game, but then you're also planning on having 2 or 3 after, right? So it's like, do you go ahead and start scouting the future games? You don't want to get ahead of yourself, but you don't want to be, when you win, you don't want to be scrambling either. Because of TV schedules, every region's schedule is a little different, but we have that off day Monday. So we haven't, we're all in on Heard That, because we know we have at least 36 hours to prepare for the second round matchup, because the day off. Now that third round matchup is Wednesday, the day after, so that we'll have to approach that a little different when we get there. But right now we're focusing all on Heard That and trying to find out the best way we can to beat them. And I also think, because of the fluid nature of rosters and glorified pickup, I think you don't need to over scout too much, right? Like, if we play good basketball, we're going to win. And so if we can implement a simple offense, simple defense, do our job, move the ball, not take any shots without one pass, box out, we're going to win no matter what the other team does.
I think with all the work that you've done, if they get it done, you've got to get at least 500,000 or $1 million.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We deserve that. Yeah. If we got paid by the hour.
Make sure you get it.
Yeah. Some of these teams do pay their players. I don't know. It's because they have billion, Syracuse has literally $1 billion booster. I think they pay their players $50,000, and not every team does, but we're barely scraping by to pay for all the meals in the hotels. So we'll cross that bridge in future years. But I think every year, when we were getting votes, it was like, is this legit? And then when we got in last year, some JMU fans caught on board, and then we made that run, and AJ's story was all over ESPN and Sports Center, and that made it a little more legit. And so I think, step 1 was getting denied. Step 2 was getting in. Step 3 is now getting a win. And hopefully that adds some legitimacy and makes us a mainstay for years to come. And hopefully fans can get excited. We know there's tons of entertainment options out there, right? Like, I work in sports business, but I know all that. But I hope teams and fans can get excited about having some JMU, something to follow this summer. And one thing we haven't mentioned, but you could maybe say it's the first Sun Belt matchup of the new conference. So we'll definitely probably play that up this weekend and hopefully some JMU fans recognize that too. I don't know if TBT had that in mind. I don't think they thought that far ahead, but yeah, it's the inaugural Sun Belt matchup between JMU and Marshall.
Yeah, there probably aren't too many alumni teams that I think would excite JMU fans, but I think the Marshall one with the Sun Belt tie-in now kind of actually.
And I think that adds legitimacy to it too. Like fans know about TBT, but unless you know about TBT, you didn't really know about sideline cancer. So it's like we're in, but who's this opponent at sideline cancer? Now it's heard that. In my senior year when I was a manager, we played, Marshall twice. Probably one of the few times a team has ever played an opponent twice in non-conference play, a home and home. But we played them twice. I think we actually beat them twice. That might have been the year they went on to win in the first round in the NCAA tournament too. And they were like a run and gun team. They would average over 100 points then. And I think John Elmore was on that team. I don't know if he ever got minutes, but he was on that team. So kind of cool there. And yeah, go Sun Belt, go JMU, go Herd.
Yeah, it should be a fun to watch, and not to like overinflate the importance, but I feel like with the men's basketball teams, like, somewhat lack of struggles in tournaments. There's almost like anything related to a tournament with a majority of men's basketball players, I feel like is going to build some
I guess I never. I mean, obviously their lack of men's basketball success in conference tournaments, but I guess, we got to buck that trend now that we lost last year. You do bring up a good point. It's not lost on us that, what men's basketball has not paid it past the quarterfinals since 2013, right?
I don't think they've won a conference tournament game. Oh wait, no.
Well, they won
they won
the
two
play-in game under Rowe a couple of times.
Yeah. There was the one where he got ejected like 8
minutes. That was a great one.
That could be a strategy if you want to get tossed, or Kevin or somebody wants.
Well, I don't like to bring this up because I'm still embarrassed and ashamed of it. And it kind of got lost if you watch the broadcast because there was a lot of chippiness going on. But I actually got a technical foul in the first half last year. I don't think people realize that.
I don't remember that at all.
Ow.
Yeah, so it was, I think when the score was like 14-14. So it was pretty chippy early on, and Cody Ballard and Marcus Keene were going at it, and they called a double technical on them. So things were really chippy. Mm-hmm. And I think 2 possessions later, we were on defense. So the ball was on our, like in front of our bench, and the referee made a call about an out of bounds play. Scooter, I think, scraped the ball out of someone's hands and it hit the backboard. And so they called dead ball. And I didn't say a word. I just jumped up out of my seat and I said, "Oh," didn't like curse, didn't even like look at the referee. And he teed me up from across the court. I mean, I still think it was unjustified, but I was so pissed at myself. And even AJ, who was sitting next to me, because he was like, he looked at the ref. It wasn't a ref that called it. He was one from me. He's like, "Man, he didn't say a word." Like, but I think they were just looking to give someone a tee because they were trying to calm things down after that double technical. But the broadcast didn't really know what was going on either if you go back and watch it. But the Elam ending kind of bails out technical fouls because it doesn't, like, no matter what, it's going to be +8 or +7, right? So, I mean, it still gave them some extra points, but it didn't affect the flow. I mean, that is when we went on that run where we got up by 13, I think, in the first half. That's when that run started. So maybe it was worth it. But so not to go too much around myself, because I was so pissed at myself for that. Because, like, obviously, like, it's not about me. And I wasn't, like, if I'm going to get a technical, I want to, like, curse out the ref and, like, like put him in his place, not jump up out of my seat out of, and I wasn't even, like, looking at the ref. I was just like, "Oh," like, because I thought he made the wrong call and he teed me up from across the court. I don't know. But
I'm going to hunt down the hihights of this game.
This
is going to be tweeted from JMU Sports News.
This
has to be found, because I didn't even thinking back to that game, I guess I just remember the end of it where it was so dramatic and so like intense. I don't even remember the chippiness that there was at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So now I have to go back and rewatch it for my own film study. Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't say we've lost sleep over it, but it's been fun. If you last year before the game, I mean, we knew we were good. We also knew sideline was good. I don't think we really knew what to expect. Like, are we going to compete? Are we going to get blown out? Who knows? But if you had told us before the game, you'll have 2 possessions or you just need a 2-point bucket to win, of course we would have taken that. And we did. We had 2 possessions. We just couldn't convert either of them. I think it was tied 77 with an Elam ending. They missed a shot, so we got 1 shot. And then they came down and Stuckey drew that amazing charge to get us another possession. And then we turned the ball over and they went down and shot a 3 to win it. So, but we're going to get that Elam ending this year.
Ending was incredible. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's interesting now that we know that you're a potential hothead on the bench. You could get tossed at any moment.
I'm gonna have to have AJ hold me down, or have the Mike Dean seat belt. I don't know if you've ever seen that YouTube video of the Mike Dean seat belt, but when he was at WAC, I mean, Mike Dean, awesome guy, but he could say a couple things to referees too. In College Game Day one year when he was at Wagner, did a story on, he actually had a seatbelt on his chair. When you Google Mike Dean's seatbelt, and there's a College Game Day story where his Wagner assistants put a seatbelt on his chair to stop him from jumping up and getting technical fouls.
Wow.
So maybe I need the Mike Dean seatbelt.
Yeah. be quite the honor, I feel like, you get the Mike Dean seatbelt.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's all I've got, Jack, but we should probably hit the highlights again. So you got the Friday in Harrisonburg. I think it was like 4 to 6 p.m. People want to watch that scrimmage. And then the game is Sunday in Charleston, West Virginia, Charleston Coliseum, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then you win. It would be a Tuesday game. I think it's Tuesday at 8 if I have the schedule
Tuesday at
correct.
8, yeah. And then Wednesday at 7, I think.
Yeah, Wednesday at 7.
And Sunday is going to be on ESPN3. I think there's maybe a chance it'll get bumped up. Some games got bumped up late last year. It's not like I have inside info. Obviously, we hope it does. But
yeah,
right now, ESPN3 and tickets are on sale online, too, if you want to come in person. We probably had 40 or 50 fans last year, which is really cool. So hopefully going to have some more. But, yeah, excited for that. Beyond the Sun Belt, I've made a couple jokes, too, about you don't have to watch this game on Flow. The jokes went easier last year when we weren't in the Sun Belt yet. But this is the first taste of what it's actually like to watch a game being broadcast on the normal network. So yeah, we hope fans can tune in and get excited and yeah, fired up to run it back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And JMU, I feel like the roster is built almost similarly to like the current team, where there's just like a lot of guys who are 6'5" and very good at basketball. So I'm pretty excited to watch that group of guys go after it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great talking to Joe. I enjoy speaking to Joe in general, but it's a cool event. I think it's a very cool event. And again, not to like put too much stock in it, but I think a win would be pretty cool for JMU fans and like the basketball program as a whole, especially on the men's side. I feel like any momentum they have, anything, even if it's an alumni team that like garners fan interest, is a huge positive. So they've already kind of won going into the week.
I'm really glad he was able to keep his cool during that interview, though, and not like jump up out of his seat at any point and get really upset at something we asked or something like that. That's insane that he got a tech.
They're probably going to have to, try to win by a few more possessions than they were looking forward to at the beginning, given Joe's temper.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny too, because he's like very even mannered, like most of the time, and super level headed. It's crazy to get a tech.
Well, anything else you have to add about this from this podcast?
Not too much. 5 o'clock Sunday, I'll try to tune in. I also think it would be really, really sweet if they won, because then you can have the midweek games in the summer with a JMU connection. Sign me up.
Yes, sir. So that's Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN3. Keep it locked to our Twitter as well as the Founding Fathers Twitter. I think they're at Founding Fathers TBT or something like that. Ben is probably going to be looking it up. It might be also be like Found Fathers.
It's Found Fathers TBT.
Okay. So you can follow along there to keep up to date with any change. It might get pushed to ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN, something like that. That's Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Also, if you're in the Harrisonburg area, Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., they're having an open practice. The guys will be there for autographs, talk with them, chat, ask them questions, fun stuff like that. So if you're in the Harrisonburg area, check that out at the Atlantic Union Bank Center. Game Sunday, if they win, when they win, off Monday, play Tuesday, Wednesday, and that's their regional, and then they have to win 3 more games to win the $1 million.
It'd be very incredible if they made a deep run.
I feel like I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of faith in this team after last year's performance. Like, I didn't think they would be able to beat Sideline Cancer last year, let alone be like, I guess, let alone that's not the right saying to segue into what I'm going to say next, but like be within 2 possessions to win it at late.
Yeah, I thought they were, to be honest with you, I thought they might lose by like 20 because of what Sideline Cancer had done. They had experience in the tournament. They had a team of like guys who were probably playing together a little more regularly, and they had shots at the end to win a multiple possessions. So if they can get a win or 2, that also helps, I think, in the future of like locking them into this, and it can be a staple of like JMU fans in the future. So it would certainly be cool if they can find a way to pick up a win.
Awesome. For Ben and Conlon, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. This has been the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. Have a wonderful rest of your day. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.